It's more fun to figure it out on your own.
That's not happening at all.
Yeah, maybe you can hold the light up for him so he can read.
What if you put the directions in front of the light so it blocks it?
Yeah, it's like everybody's quiet.
I'd like to call the meeting to order. If we could stand for the pledge.
Flag of the United States of America and to the republic justice for all.
I'd like to welcome everyone to the March Committee of the Whole meeting for the Community High School District 94 Board of Education. Mission statement, please.
Community High School strives to promote and provide growth experiences in learning, leadership, and living.
Thank you, Rich. Board agreements.
Public comment. We understand that board meetings are meeting of the board held in public, not open forum town hall meetings. We will keep this in mind as we conduct our meetings, allowing the public to provide input at the time allotted on the agenda to ensure that multiple voices of the community are heard. The public has a right to participate in the meeting only during the designated public comment time. Individuals that would like to can address the board with a 5-minute time limit. Procedures for public comment are clear and available at the meeting site. The board president will welcome any guests and review the public comment procedures. Only the board president will respond to public comment during the meeting. The board president may recognize the superintendent for factual information.
Thank you, Lynn. Roll call, please.
Mr. Brown.
Here.
Ms. Casey Mayer.
Here.
Ms. DeRamus.
Present via phone due to health.
Mr. Nagel.
Present.
Mr. Sake.
Present.
Mr. Zuniga.
Here.
Okay, that brings us to public participation. This is the portion of our meeting where any member of the public can address the Board of Education on any topic. We welcome your comments and will carefully listen to your concerns. We will not be able to engage in a dialogue during public participation, but when appropriate, we will direct the administration to follow up. Presentations are limited to no more than 5 minutes per person, with a total time limit of 30 minutes for public participation. Personal charges or complaints against individual employees, volunteers, or students of the district should not be initiated during public comment. If anyone present wishes to make public comment and hasn't already done so, please fill out one of the comment forms in the back of the room and hand it to someone seated at the table. At this point, we have received one electronic public comment from Michelle Garcia. The topic, prom tickets and prices. Hello. On behalf of the senior class, we would like to address several situations that have been concerning us. After interviewing Mrs. Ficus on December 2nd, 2022 for the Wildcat Chronicle, we have realized that the funding for prom would be at one of the lowest. She did mention during the interview that turnabout would be going towards prom costs, but also did mention prices, buses, and venues going up. To add on, during previous meetings, the conversation of money has been brought up, and we do have access to money and funding to lower the cost of the tickets. During DEN, the Student Council released that the prices of prom tickets would be $140, when the previous year it was $125. We are hoping the prices for the tickets would be lowered to $110. Due to COVID, a lot of families are still in a rough situation and are not able to afford $140. People are interested in going, but are hesitant to go due to the price. Another situation we discussed is the playlist. The music is very outdated. Even though they ask for suggestions, they don't take them. One scenario would be that last year during prom 2022, my friend and I went up to the DJ suggesting a song. It was a well-known and appropriate song. They unfortunately turned us down. Why did we pay $125 for music that we did not enjoy? To conclude, please take our concerns to heart. Sincerely, Class of 2023. And at this point, we have no other public comment. So that brings us to reports and information. Sunrise Transportation Extension.
Thank you. So 3 business managers from SASA districts negotiated a 1-year extension with Sunrise. The overall increase is 6% with various stipulations, including attendance disruptions and reimbursement to the district if Sunrise is unable to perform routes. All districts have agreed to take the extension to the board for approval. This extension will be presented for formal action at the March board meeting.
So have we been happy with the services they've been providing us?
Yeah, it's been much improved this year as opposed to the last couple of years. They've
I
been
know there
able
were
to,
some busing issues, but I think that was more Illinois Central rather than Sunrise, right?
yeah, Sunrise has been able to handle most of the routes that we've sent their way this year.
Any other questions or comments? All right, 2023 to 2024 student fee schedule.
As per board policy, we annually bring student fees to the board for approval. After review with division heads, there are no recommended changes to the 23-24 student fee schedule. We plan to bring this to March board meeting for approval.
So this is the same fees that we had last year.
Correct.
Any questions or comments? Upcoming bids.
So these are just basically FYIs of that we'll be going out to bid for laundry services. That's actually that's out in public currently. We'll look to have that board approval in April. And then after that, we have the snowplow bid, which we'll plan to have board approval in May. And then we are looking at a paper bid, which will have board approval in June.
Energy contracts update.
Rates for both natural gas and electricity have come down significantly since we last talked about energy contracts in November. I signed a 2-year electrical contract on February 24th with AEP, who is our current provider. There is an option for a 3rd year. Our consultant received multiple quotes, and AEP had the best pricing at just over 4 cents per kilowatt. Electricity has come down by about 25% since we last discussed. Unfortunately, it's still much higher than our last contract, which was just under 3 cents. But it could have been worse because when we were talking about this in November, it was just around 6 cents. So we're expecting that natural gas contract to be signed in the coming weeks as well.
So electricity will be higher than prior, but natural gas, how is what you're looking
Natural
at?
gas is down as well.
It's down from where we were paying before.
Not from where we were paying before.
How
it's
does
down.
it compare to the prior contract?
It'll still be higher than that. I'm expecting 25% higher probably.
It's not as bad as you were
Not as
fearing.
bad as what we were talking about in November.
Questions or comments? Proposed cashier position.
If you recall from the February board meeting, the administration is recommending adding a cashier position who will help centralize cash handling and enhance our internal controls. We wanted to provide the board with a job description and see if there are any questions. You'll note that this is a 12-month position under support staff bargaining agreement, and they'll report to the business office. Julie and I are happy to answer any questions on the new cashier job description or the position in general. We'll plan to bring this to the board for approval in March.
How are we handling cash now?
In various
Transactions, I guess.
in various ways. A lot of cash is collected at entrance H or in athletics, depending on what's the collection for, if that's for athletics or if it's for student activities or if it's for registration. Again, that's why we're trying to centralize it all into the cashier position.
So this one individual would be wherever cash is received, whatever the situation?
Yeah, we're still trying to figure out the best location for this person, but it might be the bookstore, it might not be the bookstore, with the goal of if somebody has students can go to that person and drop off cash for student activity reasons or for athletic or for any kind of fees. During the summer, parents can come in and pay their fees with the cashier.
Does this have to do with also when cash is collected for like after school events, that sort of thing?
Absolutely. Yeah, it
Yes,
would
can
involve
be.
all of that.
So
They'd also
whenever
manage the
people
cash
pay to see a
boxes.
play or any other athletic event, this person would be at that event collecting the cash?
This person would manage the cash boxes, so they would distribute those, collect those, and be responsible for the funds there. And so they wouldn't physically be at those events. We would still have event workers who handle that piece.
But it's tightening the controls, basically.
Correct,
Yes.
yes, yeah, really aligning with best practices for the business office.
How will you handle absences and things like that when they're not available?
Then it would probably fall back on to the how they're collecting cash right now. If that's being collected at entrance H or athletics, then
I assume there would be somebody that would take over the administrative portion of what they're doing to make sure that everything balanced and everything was handled correctly? I mean, if you're putting in new processes,
correct.
you can't just have the one person be the only person that can
Right.
deal with it.
Run into that before.
Right.
Correct.
We are trying to build in those necessary redundancies so that in some of those critical positions, when that person is out, we do have sort of a backup built in. It's not only centralized in that one individual.
So is this more for like registration purposes or straight more athletics? Because right now we have an administrative assistant and a clerical at door H, and we have a secretary at the athletic office. And when I first registered my first child through WeGo, it was a lot of like paper and pencil and checks and cash. But when we went completely virtual or online registration, in those 4 years, I don't think I ever came to do anything really with cash at the building. So I guess I don't necessarily see the value in this position and see where it would, because we still need people to take cash at like athletic events. And I don't necessarily know if there's that many people that are coming in to pay things, like as far as registration goes. I don't think that, people are paying registration more than 1 or 2 times a year. I mean, maybe like the ones that have a payment plan, but I thought the whole point to online registration was to kind of avoid, them coming into the building.
We still collect a large amount of cash in the building, and also then this person would handle a lot of the student activity cash that as fundraisers are happening and some of those advisors are collecting cash now, that cash would actually go to that cashier to handle to handle the receipt of those and deposit as well.
They would also oversee both the in-person and the online monetary transactions. So that would be the central point person who manages all of that. I'll tell you, the registration season is probably the biggest time when that need really arises. So we expect that the high time of year for the cashier would be between April and August.
So basically, anything dealing with receipt of payment is what this person is dealing with?
Right.
Yes.
I guess my only thing is I'm still hesitant to see the value because with registration, the whole point to going online was to avoid cash transactions in the building. So I don't necessarily know with us being just one school how feasible that is, because the people that are typically paying in cash are families that, it's difficult for them to pay registration fees, and some fees don't even get paid right away. They kind of like really are paying like when they have the money, which is not often, and the people that have the money to pay the fees are already doing so online. So I guess I just don't know. I think I would need a little bit more clarity on like the specifics of how we're gonna what the value is of streamlining these processes before like I would be on board with it.
Again, there's currently we on any given day we have anywhere between $200,000 and $300,000 in our student activity account, and a lot of that money is being transferred through and being handled by teachers, by coaches, by sponsors, and the more that we can centralize that into a cashier position and keep that out of their hands, the more secure that cash is and the better internal controls that we have to make sure that there isn't any other money going anyplace else.
So
maybe-
this person,
They're also, oh, I'm sorry.
sorry,
Is this more of a semantics thing? I guess when I think of a cashier, I think of somebody sitting with a money box collecting money. It sounds like this is more of a bookkeeping,
Right.
clerical
This is more
kind of
accounting,
job
right.
to keep the money straight, to have the accounts reconciled and things, and then somebody sitting there just collecting dollar bills and
Right.
making change. Is that
Right, I think there
what
might be
we're
a little bit
talking
right
about.
now of confusion between sort of the event worker who's sitting there with a cash box, collecting tickets, collecting money in that way. Totally separate from what we're talking about here with the cashier position. You're right, it is more of an actual clerical position. So, although they are responsible for collecting all of those school fees, they are working in coordination with a wide variety of departments because money is currently flowing through all these departments in a wide variety of ways. They're doing both the in-person transactions, which there's a lot of that going on, especially at door H right now. I think much more than even we were aware of until we met with all of the stakeholders who work with money handling and really saw the depth of it. And they would be managing the online transactions, particularly through the registration process. In addition to that, they're managing the bookstore and the inventory in there as well. So this is a position that year-round would be quite busy.
But the in-person, I guess, I don't see the value in it because that's the whole reason why we went online with registration. So I just don't necessarily know if I guess I would really like to see like how many actual transactions are happening, because that's not why we decided to go online registration. The whole point was that we were avoiding those cash transactions. So like I said, I don't think that there's that many people coming in to do like on the spot transactions, because a lot of the community that does handle cash will do so on a very limited basis, and people that have the money to pay for registration fees are going to do so online.
There is still a fair amount of folks who are paying registration fees in cash, paying different payments in cash. 3 big events that we'll also have throughout the year that require a lot of cash handling are, we offer still cash sales for homecoming tickets, still cash sales for prom tickets, and cash sales for graduation fees. Those are all 3 events that this person would help with tremendously and streamline that flow of money, which is going to be, all 3 combined is a significant sum.
But what has
to
been
maybe
going
get
on
some-
right now?
It's across different individuals. So some is through the activities office, some is through a different clerical person, and some is through door H. So right now it streamlines it all into one under
this
this
point-
proposal.
Right now, I think sorry, go ahead, Kathy.
It makes tremendous sense to me. I can think, aside from what Will rattled off, a ton of things that cash transactions would be coming in the door, and you've got it flowing in so many different places. And this gives an opportunity to have some control over that and have a key person responsible, and sets up a way to have dual control to make sure that everything is accountable. I'm sure that our accounting firm would be very happy, and if this isn't already a recommendation that they've had, I recall in the past them saying the more that you can have control over things like that, the better off you are. And it's often been, a staffing issue that prevented us from having controls in place in so many places, especially where there's cash involved.
And it doesn't sound like that to me. I guess to me it sounds like somebody would be standing around. It just doesn't seem like a good use of our funding for this position.
Lynn, you have trying to get in with a comment?
Well, I have a question. Who's managing the bookstore now?
Predominantly,
But we have a student worker that's in there.
And they're managing the inventory?
Yes.
Part of their job,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
So this person's responsibility is going to be to manage the school bookstore and maintain inventory. It says they have no supervisory responsibility. So who handles staffing the bookstore? Because it kind of sounds like a big responsibility. Also, they're going to assist with the management of facility rentals and maintain records, and and plus all they need is a high school diploma.
And how much inventory are we selling through the bookstore? Because that's another thing that my kids have been involved with sports, and I go through the web store for everything. I'm buying everything online. So I don't know, I'm just not seeing the value in this position.
Gary, you had a comment you were trying to?
Yeah, I think this is beyond, I think we're getting tied up with cash being the issue, and it's really not. It's all the accounting that goes with all those functions, regardless of how it's paid. Am I correct?
I guess a couple things. One thing, I wonder if maybe renaming it, because I think cashier is maybe not the correct image, some cash receipt specialist or something that, something that denotes this broader picture that you're painting. But Penny, I'm wondering if they were able to provide some statistics on the amounts of these transactions that they're dealing with, would that
Yeah, I
kind of
guess
help
I would-
allay your concerns?
I would need some more clarity. I just don't see the value in this position because I feel like you can sift through a lot of these duties through people that we already have or training secretaries on cash handling or whatever that is. And we also, there's a lot of support staff that cover multiple events throughout the building. I don't know, I just don't necessarily see the value in this just based on the duties that are given to this individual.
Do you think we can get some actual statistics on the amount of transactions we're talking about and the volume of work, that sort of thing, to kind of further justify why this is a position?
We can get some of that data.
I guess I would ask it sounds like we'd be freeing up people that wouldn't have to be handling and managing cash with clubs and athletic activities and things. We have a feel for what that would, who that would free up and what they would be able to do that's more student-directed than handling the transactions, I'll call them, rather than just cash. Because I think we're hung up on thinking about cash, and it's, it sounds to me like it's more of a bookkeeping
Accounting, yeah.
kind of a position, but maybe you don't want to call it bookkeeping because of
Yeah, bookkeeping
what
can have another
that does
meaning to it, right?
cost-wise.
But if you're looking at the duties on the way it was written, that's not what the duties are going to be, though. Yeah, like some of the duties that we're aligning with this position, I don't necessarily, that has nothing to do with just the cash aspect of
Right,
it.
right.
So I just think we need to be more clear. I don't necessarily think that the position is written the way that we're intending to utilize it. But I also think that a lot of the things that we do building-wise, also too, like going back to the activity thing, like the sponsor should really be in control of that and knowledgeable of where the money is going and how it's being spent.
Just to clarify, and Dan, you can speak to this, but isn't it recommended practice to not have a lot of people with hands involved in transactions and, money exchanges? Isn't it better to have that more centralized?
Yes, and I know Kathy brought it up this would definitely be a good recommendation from our auditors to make sure that those segregation of duties are centrally handled with cash handling and that those job duties with that one person. And so it limits the amount of cash that's, with teachers or with advisors.
So if you can imagine, with all that goes on right now, you have fundraisers, so all the different clubs and the sponsors that are involved with fundraising, and you got to get cash for the candy bars and the boxes. You got field trips. You have prom or any of the dances that are going on. You have books, fees, and fines that are occurring. So you have a lot of not just the actual exchange and payment plans too. So it's the whole. If you take a step back and look at the year as a whole and all that occurs, it seems to me that, and especially from your time with Baker Tilly when you were part of the auditor process, that the recommendation is to centralize that and not have a bunch of people doing cash handling, because one part of that is you just don't know where that's going. So when it comes to cash boxes, to disperse that as well for getting it to the events in the afternoon and collecting cash boxes, it would seem that it's better practice to centralize that. Then on top of that, just to clarify, and tell me if I'm wrong, Dan, there is that, like to Rich's point, that bookkeeping or accounting process that has to happen. So you want to make sure that that's properly done for the school, for the business office, so that there's proper accounting of that. And then other pieces that go along from as the ripple effects go out.
Sometimes there can be some difference between what's in somebody's job description and what they actually do. I mean, it shouldn't be, but that's real life, what often happens. So maybe what would help the board with this is maybe a little more explanation of, okay, here's what this person's actually going to do, here's the volume of transactions they're handling, here's the effect that this position is going to have on other positions, so that we can better understand what the effect this position would have if it's approved. Maybe that would answer some of your questions, Penny?
Absolutely.
We can do some of that. And so, to be clear, I mean, when I started here, coming from other high school districts and also being as an auditor, seeing that this was a process that was done at other schools, similar process, that was a recommended procedure from the auditors to have that separate position that helped to enhance internal controls and improve cash handling abilities. And then also working with our student services department, they're also the ones that saying that that they're somewhat overwhelmed with the amount of work that has to happen during the registration process. And so working with them and working with the staff that's in student services, this was an opportunity for us to help to limit and minimize the work that's done in there while also enhancing our internal controls.
Well, thank you for that clarity, Dan, but I still feel that there's value then, especially to see like what's happening, and maybe with that clarity and context, we're better informed at making that decision.
Okay, so if we can get some more information on that, and then maybe give a little thought to maybe tweaking the name, payment receipt specialist or something, because cashier does bring up what sounds like it's a very incorrect image of what this person's actual day-to-day is going to be.
I would think with the amount of cash that is flowing back and forth to as many hands as are involved, our current situation would be, I'm picking for somebody who wanted to embezzle money pretty easily, and this would prevent that. Anytime you read the newspaper every single day, somebody who's involved where there are heavy cash transactions, and it happens at banks all the time, his money disappears because it's nice and easy, and having dual controls can prevent future damage. So coming from the background that I come from, this just makes perfect sense to me.
Well, Bob, maybe you should
Minimize risk.
see what the position of the board is, and then just recommend that the administration do a little more clarification and a little more, fine-tuning of the position.
Well, is that what the board wishes, a little more fine-tuning, a little more clarification, a little more justification of what this person's day-to-day responsibilities would be? Because I'm kind of hearing
Because I like
some
what
opinions
Rich,
to that effect.
what Rich said too about what jobs who is getting relieved of extra responsibility, making their jobs easier, and go ahead, Giovanni.
No, I agree what you're saying.
Yeah.
I agree what you're saying.
And like I said, I'm a little worried about the bookstore now. It's just run by a student. I'm teasing. But I agree that somebody needs to be taking control of this whole situation.
Is that going to present a problem if we have further discussion about this at the March meeting, but maybe the board's not quite ready to approve it? Is that going to put you in a bind, or are we still going to be okay?
Not necessarily. I think we can talk through what that sequencing would look like to make sure that it comes to the board at a time that you're ready to take action on it.
Because it sounds like there's a willingness on the board to consider this, but
Right.
just a need for some additional information, and if there's no pressing need, we certainly don't need to rush into it if we want to get this additional understanding.
Right. And I guess I would just encourage the board, again, if you have these questions, you feel free to reach out to us in advance so we can prepare this kind of information to have it ready for you. Certainly, we don't have to wait until the meeting to hear those kinds of questions, because we'd love to have that data available for you.
Well, maybe if whatever you can put together justification-wise, if that can go out to the board early so there's a chance to maybe, okay, I still don't quite understand this, so you're prepared for further discussion at the March meeting.
So to help Dan and Julie prepare for this, I heard clarification on what the position is. So when you look at the job description, is there anything in the job description that didn't make sense, or you felt like, I also heard that the comment that maybe the job wasn't intended or written to be what it intended it to be. So is there a sense from the board as to what's missing that we're not clear on with this description that Dan or Julie can provide greater clarity on?
It sounds like some questions about the volume of transactions, cash, and what is this person going to be doing apart from the actual cash component? What roles are they going to be replacing, and what then those people would then be able to do? So basically the domino effect of
Specifically-
bringing them in, how it's going to impact things.
So it says here, maintain records, issue receipts, enter data, issue cash boxes. Is there anything more that's not clear in that the board would want to see, or is there something confusing in that statement that needs clarification?
I don't think it's confusing. I think for me, it's just the fact that, to Kathy's point, I mean, since this has been something that has happened and all of a sudden we're asking for this position, did something happen that we need to know about to make a more informed decision that helped put forth this position? Or
No,
I guess
to Dan,
that's
to
why
what,
I'm asking for clarity.
Yeah, from what Dan said in February and just at the beginning of this, it is through the experience of, again, being an auditor and also his experience in other districts, but also from our familiarity with how other high schools handle the transactions. It is a recommended practice financially to have better controls on the flow of money so that, to Kathy's point, nobody absconds with dollars, So that is the primary reason. And then you build it from there. And Dan and Julie had discussions with, like was also already indicated, people in student services and the counseling office, just to get a better sense of how the issues or where the pain points are. So that's
And I think that clarity would help us make a more informed decision.
which clarity?
Because the whole thing with how that funneled into student services and how they're being impacted, because I'm assuming that staff is being impacted, and that's why we're also having this conversation today.
Yes, they will be impacted.
I mean, I guess one of the things is, just from reading the job description, I don't think it's entirely clear to the board, not being at the school all the time, what situations are we receiving these payments. You've got registration, and then we talked about bookstore, and then we talked about events like prom and things, but what are the areas that this person's going to be getting involved in that kind of helps us understand, wow, there's a lot of situations, and we need to kind of consolidate how this is all handled. That wasn't apparent just from the job description.
It's a brand-new position, and I guess that's what concerns me too, that it's not like we're asking for somebody with an accounting background or anything. They just need a high school diploma. So that was a bit of a concern too.
Well, and that's kind of how it is handled if you think about all the different people who touch it. That's specific to that position, the requirement is just a high school diploma or however it's categorized for that position. So as an example, at entrance H, where a lot of registration happens, since that's such a log jam for a lot of things, parents coming in for lunches, wanting to put payment plans in place, wanting to register, sometimes what happens is whoever's handling that registration process will have to both take cash, but then deal with a parent who has a request for enrollment or, for a parent who wants to do a fee waiver or a payment plan. And so there's cash sitting there on the desk while they're trying to also manage the different activities going on at that desk. So that's just one
And
example.
you're saying that person has a high school diploma? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
That the
if I'm
person
not
needs
mistaken.
that particular
Yeah.
cash?
The majority of our
we're
support
looking
staff
for somebody
positions.
Yep.
to kind of consolidate
Yeah.
everything and
Correct.
put a brand-new thing in place, program in place, so that we know what's going on with all those smaller transactions, and also manage a bookstore, and also deal with facility rentals, and then cover for the front office. It just seems like it's a lot, so, yeah,
I feel like
obviously it must be needed, but.
I feel like I am hearing kind of mixed messages, though, because I'm hearing on one hand that it's a lot, I'm hearing on the other hand that there's not a need for it. So I feel a little bit confused about what we can provide the board to give the clarification that you need, and we're happy to collect that information, but we've worked with, all the different departments, administrators that this would affect. We've talked to the support staff. The association is fully behind this idea as well. And again, we would like to bring you that clarity, but I am hearing very mixed messages on sort of the concerns related to this position.
Well, I think the point that Lynn is bringing up is with those different responsibilities,
Yeah.
do we not need somebody with more than just a high school background? We need,
Right.
because it sounds like it's
Excuse
borderline
me,
management kind of position.
The job description looks very similar to what banks issue for both bank tellers and personal bankers, and with the type of functional duties that are being done other than maybe the bookstore. But again, what they would be doing in the bookstore, if a student assistant could do it, I'm assuming that it is a functional duty similar to that. And for any of those positions, those are high school diploma only. So to me, that doesn't seem like we're, looking for, we don't need somebody with a PhD to handle this type of job. And it's somebody who has, knows how to count money and oversee it and has that kind of mindset that they can make financial transactions like that and is responsible and trustworthy.
If it helps to understand where the job description comes from, it's not only derived from our own needs, but we don't create a job description in a vacuum. We go to a lot of the industry standards, look at outside of the school systems, what do these job descriptions and qualifications look like? And then we also go to other school districts and look at the types of job descriptions that already exist so that we're not entirely recreating the wheel and we're doing something that's within, again, the industry standard.
Is everyone on the board comfortable with the requirement, the educational requirement for this position? Are we comfortable that high school diploma is satisfactory?
Absolutely.
With the proper training and
Absolutely.
oversight, I think it's
Okay, that takes care of that piece. So it sounds like the piece that that would be helpful is a better understanding of the volume of transactions, how this role is actually going to affect the rest of the institution. If they free up time from over here and over here, how does that benefit? Kind of the overall, what impact is it going to have on us, and what volume of transactions are being handled? Because that's something that the board's not aware of, that day-to-day volume.
Sure, yeah, we can work on that. Thank you.
Anything else regarding the cashier position? All right, that brings us to automated floor cleaners.
Don't get excited, Rich.
I'm looking at Rich as I'm saying.
I know, he's
smiling.
I see the twinkle in his eye.
We're all getting one.
Last Monday, we had a demo from Pringle Robotics on how robots could help supplement some of the cleaning in the building. In attendance for the demo was Sergio Espinoza, our custodial manager, Pete Martino, and myself. We were impressed with the unit and how well it did in one of our hallways. Overall, the unit can run for approximately 8 hours on one charge and could clean up to 80,000 square feet in 8 hours. Other units that we investigated in the past could only clean for a couple of hours and nowhere near as much square footage. At the current time, Pringle Robotics does not have any schools utilizing their robots other than one school in Peoria, which is where their headquarters are located. They noted that there are various other businesses within the state, and there's lots of other interests for their robots, but currently only in that one school. Since they really didn't have an area business or school for the district to observe the unit in action, instead of purchasing the unit, we proposed a different option. We inquired with Pringle Robotics on the possibility of having the ability to demo the unit for a month or two. They agreed to let the district demo the unit for 1 month for a fee of $2,000, with an option to buy if we were satisfied with the robot. And they also took an additional $1,000 off the cost. Overall, the cost of the unit after discounts would be $17,000 with optional monthly support charges. We would also at some point need to purchase a charging station for $1,000 and then a workstation which allows the robot to go and fill up with water and empty the water, the dirty water, get clean water, and go back out and do some more work. That's $3,000. If we like the unit and decide to purchase, we would provide a recommendation for purchase at an upcoming board meeting.
What about other vendors and how they would compare with this one?
Yeah, the only other vendor that I'm aware of is Ice Robotics, which again, we had them out a couple of years ago, and their machines are not able to keep a charge as long and cleans nowhere as much square footage.
Which was the one that was at the school board?
That was Pringle Robotics.
That was there. Okay. So as far as you're aware of, they're the only vendor that has anything like that.
again, there's the Ice Robotics and then Pringle Robotics. Those are the only two that I've come across.
That fee that you mentioned, is that for one robot?
Yes.
Okay.
Maybe we can cut a deal where we can be their school testimonial, and
Well, and that's-
they'll give us further discounts.
We did mention that.
That was, they normally give 10% off the cost. They're giving us 15 for being their school.
So if we go this route, is one robot sufficient? Does the robot take the elevator to get to the other floors, or how does that work?
It can if the elevator is new enough that and has the right software installed on it. I don't believe ours does, but that is a possibility. Otherwise, we would just take it up the elevator.
Okay, assuming on one floor, I don't know how many square feet we have. Does this, how does
Yeah,
this?
so we
fit?
have 500,000 square feet. And
We have
so
how many square feet?
we have 500,000 square feet in the building. The robot can clean 80,000 square feet. Mainly, we're looking at, and you can create tasks for the robot that they can go out and at certain times of the day and do a job and then go back home. Ideally, we probably see this.
Home meaning the docking station, not like home outside the building.
We thought Dan was
Yeah,
going to
it's
take
not-
care
no.
of it.
Clean his floors too.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so ideally, we see this, on the second or third shift. Basically, these things we can map it so it'll just go up and down the hallways and clean those for that 8 hours with somebody checking on it periodically. Allows custodians that they wouldn't have to go down and do the scrubber through the hallways and sweeping through the hallways, that they would have the opportunity to go do something else when it's needed. If we're short staff, it allows us to get this building even cleaner than what we normally would.
So do you feel?
Hours of custodian time would this save if we were going to do whatever our best combination of floors that are accessible would be?
Probably a couple of hours. Our custodians could probably get up and down and sweep and scrub the floors within probably 2-3 hours of what the robot can probably do in 6 to 8 hours. So we're hopeful that it gets 2 or 3 hours back to a custodian.
Per night,
Yeah,
which they can use for other things.
correct.
So you feel there's justification for going down this route?
Well, the big thing is that we really don't know how it's going to benefit. There's not a lot of high schools in the area that really have tapped into the idea of an automated cleaner. So in our in Dan's conversation with Pringle, not having a lot of schools that are already doing this, that was one of the things that we pitched was, we need to see how this will play out. I mean, to your question, Bob, like how will this affect? We don't know. We have their stats, but then the reality of what it actually does once you get it is a different thing. So that's why we want to test it out and get a sense of it, because the other piece that we're not aware of too is, it says it has a monthly app download that it has to perform, and don't know how that plays out and how, the self-cleaning and a docking station and all that. So I think there's definitely merit to it, but we want to proceed cautiously and do it on a trial basis and then get more data to collect on how it's actually going to benefit and provide, better services and more timely services. Like one of the things that we think it really could help out is in the wintertime when, floors are really sloppy. That's a good one too. So
Do we think that the 1 month trial will be sufficient to get an idea whether this is justified for us?
I hope so. There's an option to extend it if after a month. We can try to extend for another month until we feel satisfied.
So it's a $2,000 investment for a month field trial, basically.
Right.
Right now, is the janitorial staff having a hard time keeping up with what they're supposed to be doing?
They do a great job. But obviously there's times that they're short it if somebody calls in sick or something like that. Then they're trying to cover for somebody else, and this would help.
Are they receptive to the concept of a robotic floor cleaner?
Again, Sergio Espinoza was there and as our custodial manager, and he seemed impressed of what it could do and how it could benefit his staff.
So are you looking to get board approval at the next meeting to start this, or you're starting the trial on your own?
We're starting the trial on our own.
So when is it starting, or has it started?
It has not started. We're still waiting for we've signed some paperwork and waiting for the robot to be delivered, and then get it, and then have Pringle Robotics come up and set that up. And then if we feel comfortable with it after a month or whenever, we'll bring that back to the board for approval if we feel so.
Maybe you could arrange to have it cleaning the floor in the area of the boardroom at the next meeting, so we can all kind of take a look.
It is a scene out of Star Wars.
Because
It
that
really
would be
is.
that would be interesting to see.
Yeah.
To your point, Moses, other schools may not have it because this is a fairly new product.
It's fairly new.
And they probably don't have a board member that's a pain in the butt.
We're really excited about it.
Promoting
Either
the
way.
need for this.
You know, that's in the minutes now.
And it is recorded live
That's who that
stream.
was.
So
I'm not going to point fingers at anybody.
don't be disappointed. It doesn't look like a robot. There's no arms or legs. It's
It doesn't say warning, Will Robinson,
No,
or anything like that.
Looks like R2D2.
It does kind of. It does kind of.
Neanderthal.
All right, well, that should be very interesting to follow up on. And that brings us to enrollment projection study.
Yeah, just to set some context about this, I think you're aware that District 33 engaged in an enrollment study, and the results of that has been very enlightening, at least from our perspective. And given that information, it seemed to be worthwhile for us to conduct our own enrollment projection study. So I'm talking to Dan. He reached out to get some vendors and quotes from various people who do that. We did reach out to districts 25 and 34 to see if they wanted to participate in that, and we do have interest from District 25, so they do want to jump on board once we identify who it is that we're going to go with. But Dan can provide some information about some of the quotes that he got or vendors that he got.
Yes, we inquired with multiple demographers regarding that enrollment study. I received 3 responses back from one from Dr. Charles Coffran, one from Dr. John Casarda, and Flow Analytics. We had some discussions with each of those on the district's intent of the study and what we plan to do with the results. Quotes were prepared and reports from other clients were reviewed. Costs range from anywhere between $9,000 to almost $20,000, depending on the type of report. After lengthy discussions with a couple of those demographers, my recommendation to the board would be to approve the letter of agreement from Dr. Charles Coffran. His reports are very thorough. He has connections with various agencies in DuPage County and the Illinois State Board of Education, which would help to ensure an accurate projection. Some of his recent studies included Highland Park High School District 113, Glenbrook High School District 225, and Naperville School District 203. Dr. Coffran's cost is expected to be around $12,000 or so.
So is that something that is coming for approval at the March meeting?
Yes.
Any questions or comments regarding enrollment study?
It's something we used to have done pretty regularly, and I think we haven't seen one in a while. I think it's very necessary to do.
I think it was 2007.
Yeah.
We are definitely due for one, yes. Staffing summary.
All right. I think it was around this time last year that Mr. Sake had requested sort of a historical snapshot of our licensed FTE. And I thought it was so helpful and it was very timely, so it makes sense for us to probably revisit this about once a year, especially in light of the staffing request that's going to be coming later this month. I did provide just an extra printout of the same PDF that was available in your packet, just in case you want to be able to follow along and see some of the major patterns we're looking at here. More than anything, when I look at this historical staffing summary, it really is clear that both the district and the board have a steadfast commitment to the students. You can absolutely see that in the trends that we see from 1819 all the way through to today. When you look at that total net change from 140.2 to 161.7 positions, 21.5 FTE added and licensed, really shows that commitment to meeting student needs. I think we can see that in two main areas. One of them is in social emotional supports, the other in academic interventions. First, when we think of those SEL supports, we're really looking at those school social worker numbers, school counselors. We also saw an increase in SLPs, particularly since COVID, and using some ESSER funds on the front end here. And these are addressing the SEL needs of our students and increasing that family communication and connection. You'll also notice an increase when it comes to our teaching staff, particularly in the core areas, so providing that additional academic support and intervention that students require in math, science, social studies, and English, as well as in special ed and ESL, addressing needs of those special populations. I think the only area we'll really see a decrease, and it's slight, is in world languages. But I would remind the board that world languages and ESL do share staff. So more than anything, that just shows sort of a redistribution where some of those same FTEs are being used to provide additional supports in ESL rather than in French, German, and Spanish. Now, just as kind of a sneak peek of what's to come, we did have sectioning meetings. I believe, was that last week?
Last week?
It feels like it was a month ago. My goodness, it was just last week. And across the board, we're seeing quite a bit of consistency from where we are in the current school year. I would say one major exception is there's a much greater need for foods classes, more than 160 additional student requests for foods. And so knowing that this is an area that's a potential pathway for our students and offering them more opportunities to explore, that's an area where we currently have an overload. We will be requesting an additional FTE specifically for FACS going into the 23-24 school year. As we look at those other needs, we are still processing those, and so we'll be prepared to bring you that request on March 21st.
Any questions or comments regarding staffing plan? All right, that brings us to student representative. The reason this is on the agenda is, Rich had brought it up several months ago, and that's something that we used to have on this board. And also at the school board conference, I attended a session that was hosted by Oswego District 308, and they talked about the excellent results they've had from having a student representative to the Board of Trustees. So we wanted to have a discussion about that and how we may want to move forward in that regard. Moses or Will, did you have any comments in this regard?
Yeah, I would like to suggest that I think it's always nice to have, the visibility of kids, at the meeting, whether it's at the table or, recognizing them. I think there's an opportunity to revisit how we do that, different from what has been done in the past. So just to bring everybody up to speed, in the past, we would have one student stay, if they could, if he or she could, stay for the entire year on the board. And procedurally, usually, Dr. Domaraki at the time would ask me to find somebody, and we would typically go out through student council, because student council seemed to be the natural place to go, because they're involved in the aspects of government, so to speak, with the school and running the school, with the activities. Oftentimes, having one person stay for the whole year was a challenge, because if you can imagine, a lot of our kids who are in student council who are also involved in a lot of other activities, whether it's athletics or clubs or during the year with band and so forth. So getting to especially finals week or towards the end of the school year, it was always hard for them to attend an evening meeting. And then you have events and competition. That was things that they wanted, to participate in. They'd have to miss meetings as well. So then it evolved into having one person per semester. And, when it got to that, again, depending on how involved they are with their athletics and activities, it could still be very difficult to spend an entire semester coming to the meetings in the evening. I think one of the benefits, and you can tell me, well, I guess I would like to hear what the benefits are that the board would see in having the student rep and what they would like to see that student rep accomplish, or what type of information they would want to glean and hear from, because that'll help us structure that more appropriately, so that we can, get that kind of representation. So what's the board's flavor in terms of just what they want to see that student rep accomplish?
Well, I know one thing that was done with the student rep in the past here was that they would have the opportunity to give a report at the beginning of the meeting, which is, whatever that particular student feels is important from the perspective of a student at the school. So that's useful. What I feel could be even more useful is having them at the table for the rest of the meeting, because as we debate and discuss and question different topics that we have to decide on that are very related to student life in our school, be very interesting to hear that student's perspective representing the students at this high school and how they would respond to that, and did they think that this had concerns or that sort of thing. Obviously, they would be non-voting, but they would be able to bring to the board's attention. I think, Penny, you're the only one right now that still has students in the school?
I have
you-
one coming, but not here
Okay,
yet.
so right now, there's nobody
Right.
on the board that has a student
Exactly.
in the school. I had found it until last May very helpful that I would get feedback from one of my children as to, okay, what's it really like walking through the halls these days? So having that
30
feet on the
minute
ground, what's your feeling about this can be very useful, I would think.
Another opportunity that I think is really valuable, and I don't know if I got this wrong, but I thought that it was also open to specifically the class president. And I think that's also somewhere that we could consider, because I think that at the end of the day, some of these opportunities throughout the year to kind of put your input on how things are going, what things could be done, or new opportunities of consideration, or things that they want to kind of bring to their president, so that their president kind of brings it here. I think that would be valuable, and I think at one point we were doing that.
No, we never really had a class president do that. I know that there were people from student council, and at times it might have been coincidentally that they were a class president, but that wasn't just the exclusive way that it went. And I heard you say that you want that student to stay for the whole meeting.
Yes.
I can tell you more often than not, the students ask if they can leave because they got studying to do. So, if you imagine one student staying for now 2 meetings or however meetings we have, and it could go 2 hours or, depending on the topic, later than that. Again, in the past, and I think Gary and Richie remember this, and Kathy, they would more often than not say, I got to go because I got to study or I got some other engagements that I would like to participate in. So that is a consideration. I'm not saying that there isn't value for them to stay, but in terms of respecting what a kid is going through and just their time commitments, my suggestion was to tap into a variety of students. So I know Will meets with leaders from the DEN groups, and then how many you meet with each level, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's like 25 per
20 to 25 per grade level.
So Will meets with, and so kind of a leadership DEN group that he gets feedback from, gets questions out there, gets their input. I think if we tap into that and have a student one, from each level just rotate through, I think that eases the burden of one student staying the whole time for the entire year or for the entire semester. Allows the board to have a different perspective from freshman all the way through senior as well, as opposed to just one exclusive viewpoint. And depending on what the board questions, the questions that the board may have, we can filter that back down the other way too, and use that as an avenue to get some other feedback that the board might be interested in.
One thing that occurred to me as a kind of an educational thing, being that we have a student council, if this was brought to the student council that said the Board of Trustees of the district is interested in having a student representative, what's your thoughts as a student council? How do you think that the student body could best be represented?
Another thought I had is that this would be an opportunity to kind of allow us to kind of have that collective communication, and maybe put even us a survey out to us as board members and what we want that to look like, and also to the student body as well, or to student council, but do like a survey I think that would be valuable.
I think to
Advantage of having one person for a whole semester or a
Yeah,
whole
I don't see
year
the
is that
value
we
there.
don't get the diversity and the cross-section of the school. You hear from one person who's probably doing very well in school and has good family support and things.
Yep.
You're not hearing from other segments. So
Sure.
it seems like, if we had maybe your den council make suggestions for every meeting, say, could you go to this one? Could somebody else go? We'd get a better cross-section. We'd hear more about what we want to hear, not necessarily what somebody wants to tell us.
Agreed, and I've seen it go that way too in my career, where a student representative becomes very representative of themselves.
Yeah.
And they've got a lot of very personal things about whether or not that position should have a preferred parking spot in front of the school or not. But I do think there would be an opportunity, Penny, to your point, the way that we've set this den council structure up, it's designed that we can get input from the student body. How's this going? How do you perceive this? What about this? But also to have it be a communication piece back to the rest of the student body. So each person in those meetings represents a den, and each of those students by proxy then represents the entire school. So by saying to them, hey, we're going to bring a freshman here to a board meeting, they could maybe give input, hear some things back, bring it back to their freshman den council group, and they in turn can bring that back to the entire freshman class. So there is a nice back and forth, up and down, instead of putting everything right at the one pinnacle right there. I think a question I would have just procedurally, because to Dr. Chang's point, this would be an incredible amount of time to put on one kid, especially if we're at 2 meetings a month. And as this is the more deliberative meeting, or designed to be, would we be looking at somebody coming to a meeting every 2 weeks, having a student representative?
Maybe we
I
should
was
maybe-
thinking it would be at a board meeting.
Yeah,
Just the
me too.
regular board
Just the
meeting?
regular board
So
meeting.
I think that makes more sense, but I want to understand where the board's at.
Yeah.
I was just envisioning the regular board meeting.
Okay.
I would think so. I would think so.
Great.
And so what you're suggesting is that it would be a rotating
Yeah.
set of students.
So
Do you think we
August
have a
could
better
be
chance
seniors.
of a student that would be likely to stay for the entire meeting then?
I think if they are just doing one meeting in a year, I think they could. We could get it to where, and I could pick from the council or work with them on a rotating basis of who can really commit to August, who can really commit to September, October, and go that way. And we could just rotate. It could be senior started off, and then junior, sophomore, freshman, and then back up to seniors, and try to work through it
Idea
that
of
way.
having different classes, because I think in the
Yeah.
past, it was
I do
always
too.
a
That's
That's a
senior.
good idea, Will.
So we hear, from people that are leaving instead of people that are saying, well, I'm going to be here for 3 more years. I want to have some stake in this.
Are we able to ensure that we're getting, a lot of times students that are involved in leadership are the ones that are like the AP students and all.
Yeah.
Are we able to ensure that we're getting a broader view than just that
Yeah.
category of students?
So I have roughly 120 students. I've met with them all. Some of the cohorts I've gotten to twice, and it is an incredible cross section. And because the nominations were specifically, we're not just looking for the high flyers who are going to be the ones who dominate senior honors night, at their graduation. Rather, who really represents the school. And we gave the teachers 5 criteria. We wanted them to be communicative, team players, representative, and able to convey messages. And we definitely got a great cross section. So I think we could continue that representation here.
Because apart from year in school, I'm very interested in the different opinions of students that are in different places through the process.
I think in addition to the information we would get, it's probably a great opportunity for a student to go back and relate what he heard and what he feels. And, maybe we'll develop people that are more in trajectory for leadership and,
Maybe we'll develop
School
a
board
student that
members.
wants
Yeah.
to be a future school board
Yeah,
member.
right.
Well,
Yeah, thank you.
And frankly,
It's
Yeah.
a good exercise in civics.
well, and
Right,
actually,
exactly.
I think it does give you the opportunity as a board to communicate with that student, who can communicate then to the representatives of their cohort, who then communicate to their entire cohort. So I think it's a good opportunity.
people interested in watching live streaming to see what's going on and you know.
Yeah, all the kids tuned
see
in.
their
They're all tuned in right now.
classmate
I'm sure they are.
Yeah.
I'm sure they are.
Yeah, they crash the server every time.
Because it's more fun than math homework.
Depends who you ask.
Is this something that Will, you can bring to this group and then bring us back their response? Whether they feel that they're ready to jump in and participate in something like this?
We'll start next week.
That sounds wonderful.
Meet with it weekly?
No, well, there's 4 different groups, and so I try to meet with one group every 2 weeks. Takes me about 8 weeks to get through the whole cohort.
So you could have some initial info to bring to us at the next meeting then on what the initial response was.
If I get busy tomorrow, yes.
And this would start next
School year.
Not this year then?
Probably at this point, I would think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think at this point we would wait till next
We
school
need to
year.
like ramp up the process.
Right, and then we would move up the nomination and selection process. We didn't do it until late fall this year. We let the dens get going, but then for next year, it would just give us a different timeline to begin developing.
Plus, I think it also allows Will to have a chance to really establish what that group is for. I think to Will's credit, it really is a cross-section of our entire school, and that's why there's so many kids at all those levels. And, with DENS being the first time through for everybody this year, it gives also an added purpose to it. So once we establish that, we can definitely bring that to the board for a student rep next.
Sounds good. That sounds good. Any other comments regarding student representative? Okay, that's the end of the open session material. We will be going to an executive session, and there will not be any action taken or discussions happening after executive session. We need a motion to go into executive session for the purposes of the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees, as well as security procedures, school building safety, and security.
So moved.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Casey Mayer. Ms. DeRamus. Ms. DeRamus?
Kathy?
Aye.